Hey there, good morning, folks. Happy Sunday to you. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Coming at you live with this week's stocks to watch. Just got done doing most of my scans, and I don't have everything on my list here that caught my eye. I mean, I got to trim it down a little bit, right? Try to get through this fairly quickly. But there were actually quite a bit of charts out there that did pique my interest and set alerts on. But let's go ahead and get started with the stocks that I am really going to be kind of focusing on next week. You know, this AMY had a fairly decent announcement here. It popped over here and then has been pulling back since that announcement. Look, as we're going through this list, make sure that you're always aware of when these companies may be reporting earnings. You don't want to be jumping into a stock for a swing uh, when you've got earnings coming out, which could be a binary event for the stock. So just be real cautious and aware of that before you go piling into anything. But you know this ANY pulled back, basically bounced off the $2 holla. Had a little spike on Friday. The volume was not all that convincing, but it's kind of in an interesting area, right? $2.70. Look for it to break through there and potentially go back up and test that 325 range. Um, you know that I'm looking for maybe a continuation next week. BITA, my buddy Russell pointed this one out to me actually last week, and I was watching it consolidate, and I completely missed the break on Friday, and I don't know how I did that, but now it's coming up into resistance, coming up into this trend line. But this could be the beginning of a breakout. I mean, the volume did pick up a bit on Friday. If it takes out that trend line, maybe this one's got a little more oomph behind it. Can get up to somewhere into the $39 range is kind of what I'm thinking. So BITA, I definitely think you want to have that on your radar. Uh, this is the only stock that I got a request for. From my video yesterday where I said, tweet them or email or text me. I don't care. But this is the only one I got asked about. And look, here's the thing. Baba has broken this trend line. It closed above it, closed nearly at the high of the day. Look, part of that comes off of the fact that Amazon and Microsoft and some of those big tech companies had really nice earnings last week. Baba's got earnings coming up next week. So I think you have to be really careful. What you have to take into consideration with this one is that it's had a very nice run into this earnings number, right? Now, that's not to say that if they report earnings, they won't have a nice gap up. But the question is, where will they have some resistance? And likely you're going to see some resistance around this $80.90 range, right? Because that served as support for a while here, and then it broke down. Now it has become resistance, as you can see it here. So 80.90 is kind of where I'm thinking that we're going to see some resistance unless they absolutely just crush it, right? But even then, I wouldn't be chasing this thing on a gap up, right? You want to see a gap up and then maybe pull back to an area of support where you could look to start to enter there. But Baba, I think is a risky one to be holding into earnings since it's already had this incredible move right up into the earnings report. So just be careful and conscious of that one. THC, look, this one is interesting to me for a long-term hold. Okay, now the company is laden with it has a lot of debt, but let's back this thing out and take a look at the weekly. So if you look at this thing, it's pulled back basically right to this trend line on the weekly, right? And it managed to close right at it, which is I find very interesting. You had a couple of hedge funds take a fairly sizable position in this thing around $36 or so. Now you got a downgrade in the stock, and that's what drove this thing to gap down. This could be a big capitulation candle right here, right? I mean, it was huge volume, 16 million shares traded hands, and now it almost looks as though it kind of has found its area of support. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some kind of a snapback or a rally in this one and potentially fill this gap up around $34.60 or so. This one is very intriguing to me, and I'm probably going to start dipping my toe for a long-term hold. I mean, that's really kind of what I'm thinking. But this the other thing to consider is if this thing breaks below this trend line with any kind of significant volume, it could, look, if it breaks below 25.57, this thing may be completely broken. It may be something that you have to just avoid completely. So, there's a lot of questions with this one here. They do have a lot of debt, like I said, but this one could be interesting for a snapback trade. Just a quick swing, couple 2-3 day. Let me just see this thing real quick on a different chart. I just want to see. I mean, look, everything is sloping down. This is, I mean, this is probably a risky little bet, but I don't know. I think the healthcare names have just gotten destroyed recently, and this one is interesting. Like I said, for possibly a rubber band snapback play. I want to see. It is completely out of the Bollinger Band, right? That's the other thing that I'm kind of looking at here. It's completely out of the Bollinger Band. So, if this thing gets any kind of juice, I think you could get a pretty violent snapback. And like I said, go up into that $36 range. So, could be a nice day trade setup or, a couple 2-3 day swing. Maybe an opportunity to start building a long-term hold position. I'm not sure. But I think it's worth having on the radar. So let's go back to my cleaner chart here. SWIR, this thing is looking pretty hot, right? It's actually coming up into this resistance here. Basically, you're looking for a $25 roll, break this trend line. Communication equipment, there are several stocks that look pretty hot that have actually broken out. And, look for this one. I don't know when they report earnings, but if they take out this trend line, take out 25 bucks with any kind of conviction, I think you could have a nice little pop in this name. So worth keeping an eye on SWIR. Cree. So, Cree, actually their balance sheet looks pretty good. I mean, this thing has been it's been pounded, man. I mean, this thing. Let's take a look at the weekly. Back out a little bit here. Was 75 bucks. It's $26. Flirting with the $26 holla right on this. Basically, this area of support seems to have held really nicely. So this thing could be getting ready to make a little bit of a move. I mean, it's in a primary downtrend. You have to recognize that. But when you catch these stocks that are breaking a primary downtrend, you could be on the cusp of a pretty substantial run. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on a $26 break a trend line with some conviction. Also, there's some insider buying that's been happening. So you guys know how I feel about the insider buying, right? If you're putting up your own money, I don't care how rich you are. If you're putting up a good chunk of money, you're doing it for one reason, and that's because you think that it's undervalued and you can make a move higher. This EXEL, this thing had a big gap. It's not really a clean looking chart, but if biotechs do not get crushed next week off of the big meeting on Friday, if this thing, if biotechs somehow actually get a push, then you can see this thing take out this trend line, go back up and test somewhere around that 669 area, and that's nearly a dollar move. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on EXEL. TTMI, this was on my list last week, and I continue to watch it. Why? Because it really hasn't done anything, right? It's still flirting with the $7. It hasn't made its decision on which way it wants to go. You've got some tight candles here. If it could take out basically 710 with some conviction, you could have a nice little popper. I don't know when earnings are on this thing, but I think it's worth continuing to watch for a $7 break with conviction. AMBA, another name that has been really decimated, right? So we've got GoPro coming up next week with their earnings, and I almost took GoPro, and it's on this list actually. I'll be there in a second, but AMBA, I like the look of it. it does appear to me as though maybe it's in a an area of support. I mean, this is a, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But if GoPro reports good numbers, and GoPro pops, look for this to go with it. If GoPro misses and reports a terrible number, you could see this thing tank. So just keep that in mind. Oh, Weight Watchers, look, I have no interest in Weight Watchers at all whatsoever. I don't know how that even got on there. CVEO. I bought this. I'm out of it. I have a small position, lotto position. I've been waiting for this thing. I wanted to pull back to about $1.75 or so, or $1.60 in that range. Was looking to get back involved, re-add to my position, but I have to tell you, this thing has been consolidating nicely, right below or right above the $2 holla. You've got a lot of insider buying around $1.89, $1.84 range. I think there was another one at $1.54. But I like the way this thing's consolidating. And if oil does find a way to, and energy names continue to consolidate the way they are, if oil gets some kind of a pop, I think you're going to see CVEO break out as well. HIVE has been on my radar. It continues. This is not a very that's a pretty evil number actually, but I do like the way this thing is testing this trend line. There's been some insider buying at $6 range. I think you look for this to break out. Maybe it's waiting for earnings before it does, but Hive is on my radar. Taser, reported some news this morning about in-car cam. They also announced, I think last week, that they teamed up with Ambarella on their body camera. So that's kind of interesting too for Ambarella. Another thing to think about. But I do like this Taser. I really kind of wanted to get it down around $20 or so. I don't know if I'm going to get that opportunity, but new products coming out. I think it's interesting. It took a hit because somebody else was getting into the space, but I think it's worth paying attention to for potentially to start a swing position. Or, I mean, it's an ugly chart. You got to be a bit careful here, but it's on my radar. I do want to keep an eye on it. GoPro, like I said, I almost took this on Friday. I had a limit buy order in. It just never triggered. I was trying to get it at $28.99. It didn't happen. I'm going to look at this thing next week. I may dip my toe before earnings. I know that is a risky proposition. If they miss, it could get crushed. I like the fact there's been some insider buying. I like the fact that it looks as though it's kind of basing right around its IPO price. I don't think it's an expensive stock anymore. It's worth keeping an eye on and possibly participating in before the earnings report. Rovi has had some insider buying at $10.84, another at $11.14. It's been consolidating. I'm looking for a range break, basically take out 12 with conviction, and I think this bad boy could run. It's probably waiting on earnings, but it's interesting to me. If it were to get down to this $10 range, I think I would dip my toe. Sones, been consolidating a bit here, looking for a trend line break, take out, basically go up, test 7, maybe take that out. But interesting, communication equipment, another one. I think the sector is kind of hot. MOBL, it was on my list last week, flirting with the $4 holla, probably waiting on earnings, looking for a break over 4 with conviction. EIGE, it's been also consolidating, looking for it to take out 1550 or so. Let's see what else we got here. Nope, I don't know what the heck that is. Okay, don't know what that was supposed to be, but that's not it. So moving right on. SPRT. Look, I actually took a little position in this thing at a $1.24 and looking for it to take out this $1.33. There has been a tremendous amount of insider buying on this thing. I do know that they have earnings, I think, coming up this week. It's a small position that I got involved. I'm following the insiders on it, and we'll see how that works out. That's it, folks. That's all I've got for this week's Stocks to Watch. Be careful out there next week. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the IBB and with the Fed, but it should be an interesting week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you all next week.